Welcome. If you're just joining us, you're watching our live stream coverage of the trial of Christopher Schurr. This trial started around 8:40 this morning and kicked off with opening statements from both the prosecution and defense. We have a lot to cover. Some of the main things you'll hear is about not only some key witnesses that have started talking in this process, but also the opening statements from both the defense and the prosecution. Some things that we have noticed so far in this case, that this courtroom is completely full with support for both Schurr and Lyoya. We have seen Christopher Schurr, he's there right now, and we have seen also family members supporting him, along with supporters outside of the courthouse supporting Schurr. We've also have seen numerous supporters for Lyoya in the courtroom. Some of the key things that we heard from the prosecution in terms of the opening statement is what we could be hearing in this case. Chris Becker focused a lot on some of the experts that we'll be hearing, both we'll be hearing from police experts and taser experts. That's kind of one of the main focuses of this case, is the taser that's in question that possibly led to the unfortunate death of Patrick Lyoya. We also heard some of the training that police use and why the proper way as to how to use a taser in a situation like this. We'll also be hearing from the defense as to what they plan to bring, showing why Christopher Schurr may have made the decision that he made in this case. Also hearing from experts on why they believe that he did the proper thing in this situation. We personally have spoken to a de-escalation expert about what are some of the steps that Schurr may have taken in this process to make the decision that he made. We also heard from some witnesses. We kicked off with the person that Patrick Lyoya stayed the night with the night before he was killed. That person talked about what he saw leading up, why he was at the house the night before he was in that incident, and what he saw before the situation happened. We also heard from the passenger of that car. He talked into some detail about what led up to the shooting, what he saw. He had mentioned that Patrick had pulled over his car because the car was making loud noises. He doesn't mention Schurr stopping the car. He says that the car was already stopped. He was also questioned so far before this break. He's only been questioned by the prosecution. After this break, he will be questioned by the defense. Part of this case includes the video that this passenger took when the shooting happened. He's questioned about that. He's questioned about there's been talk about the consumption of alcohol that Patrick Lyoya had, and both the person that Patrick Lyoya stayed at that person's house and the passenger talking about alcohol consumption. So there's a lot to get through today. We have right now standing by Cali Lichter and also Josh Albertus. They've been covering the trial. We're gonna go ahead and jump to Cali. Cali right now is in the courthouse in a separate area from where the trial is taking, but she's been watching this trial since it began. Cali joins us now. Cali, what can you tell us right now?
Lauren, I think that just from the few hours of in-court things that we've been seeing, you could clearly see what both the prosecution and the defense are going to try to be proving here, or should I say the prosecution, because they really are bearing the load on this. Schurr is innocent until proven guilty. They could just sit there. They didn't have to do an opening statement if they didn't want to. It's up to County Prosecutor Chris Becker and the rest of his team to prove what he said, that the defendant caused the death of Patrick Lyoya, that the gunshot wound that Lyoya had to the back of his head was the cause of his death, and that he intended to kill or do great bodily harm and knowingly created a high risk of death or bodily harm, with death or bodily harm being the consequence. And here's really the main thing they're going to try to be proving, that it wasn't justified, it wasn't not under circumstances that could be a lesser crime. Now, this is also something that Becker was stressing during jury selection. He was upfront and honest with potential jury members and the 14 who were eventually chosen. You know, this is what he sets out to do. They are not arguing, and he even touched on this in his opening statement, which we had just heard, that, you know, he's not arguing if Patrick Lyoya was committing a crime beforehand or not. He acknowledged that, you know, there could be a circumstance where Lyoya could have been charged with fleeing and eluding obstructing a police officer. But that's not what they're here to do during this trial. They are here to discuss kind of the final moments of that video, the gunshot. And that's what they're going to set out to prove during the duration of this trial.
And Cali, I want to ask you about the taser. We both heard from the prosecution and the defense honing in on the use of the taser. It sounds like that's going to be a major part of this case.
Lauren, definitely. That was a big chunk of these opening statements that we heard earlier this morning. And there's kind of two views on the taser that were laid out. The people are going to be arguing that this taser was not a lethal force, that, in Loyola's full possession, he would not have been able to cause death or great bodily harm to Schurr with it. And they're going to call in an expert. They're going to hear from, someone who is involved in the maker of these tasers about how, if this taser were to have hit Schurr, that it would have just caused, some minor pains that come along with being tased, and that, being hit by this taser was not great bodily harm or death, and there didn't need to be, a gunshot from Schurr on the other side. But then we heard from the defense that in the hands of Loyola, it could have had greater consequences, and Schurr feared for his life. When Loyola was in possession of the taser, they said that Schurr could have been, incapacitated. Loyola could have grabbed for the gun. There was a lot of things that could have happened, if this taser was deployable, if this taser was deployed in such manner. So there is a great divide on what this taser could have done. And I think we're going to see that throughout the trial. Again, they're going to have someone come in and talk about the use of the taser, how the taser could have been used, what are the consequences of being tased. And I'm sure from all the police experts that we're going to hear throughout this trial, they're also going to be talking to this GRPD issued taser. And again, that is kind of the crux almost of these two arguments that we're going to be hearing throughout the trial, Lauren.
And we also heard from the first witnesses in this case. The first witnesses were brought to the stand. What did you hear from both of those people? I believe one of those people was the passenger in the vehicle.
Yes, one of the passengers, or one of the people that we heard testimony from, said that, Loyola was like a brother to him. It was Amy Therese May, and he was the passenger in the vehicle that filmed that cell phone video that has been seen by thousands of people at this point. And we also heard from another person on that stand during their testimony that Loyola was spending the night at his house, the night before this incident went down. He was one of the last people to see him alive. So those are kind of the starting testimonies, but especially from that passenger, he was saying that they were going to meet up with a friend, that, someone needed to drop a daughter off, and that's kind of why they were in the car. And kind of that initial starting point on why Loyola got out of the car in the first place was to check on a noise that was coming from the car. And so they're kind of laying out, step by step what happened. And it's been 3 years, and I think for a lot of people, you could say 3 years is a lot of time to remember these minuscule details. And I know that the witnesses are having a slightly hard time. Some questions have to be repeated, and some memories jogged about what happened 3 years ago. So when we left, we are not on that 30-minute delay. Therese May was getting cross-examined by Matt Borgula, who is Schurr's attorney, and they're kind of going into, what happened? Were they intoxicated? Were they drinking? Did they sleep the night before? Was Loyola asleep in his clothes? So a lot of hard questions, a lot of details about what had happened, the hours, the day before leading up to this incident, Lauren.
Well, Cali, we really appreciate you. Again, Cali is in the courthouse right now in a separate area from the trial. There's very limited seating in the courtroom, so Cali is in a separate area watching the trial live. We, of course, will be coming back to you throughout the day. So, Cali, we appreciate your reporting.